Welcome back once again to the Housewives News Network. Now, usually I'll say no commentary, just the stories, but we're going to do something a little different this week. I'm your host, Taylor J, and you can find me on social media, and you can find those at the bottom of your screen on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. But what we're going to do today is I'm going to give my commentary, my thoughts. This is going to be somewhat of an op-ed. And if you've never heard of an op-ed, it's basically a journalist giving their opinion. Since we reached the end of the season, we've done with just going through what the episodes were about, stating the facts for the most part. But now that we're at the reunion, I feel like I can give myself an opportunity to open up a little bit and share just some of the things that I think about what happened, because there was definitely a lot that happened on the Real Housewives of Atlanta Season 15 Reunion Part 1. Now, it's only a 2-part reunion this season, which is something that has not happened in many years. And it's kind of unfortunate because this actually was a very entertaining first part. I want to say that the real MVP for me the entire episode was definitely Andy. He was so much fun. I loved how they started the reunion with him praying and meditating, because we all know that those reunions can get crazy. They're in there for hours on end. There's so much bickering, so much going back and forth. So I thought it was a cute touch that he had to center himself and get all zen before they started. So all the ladies started to come out one by one. We see their different looks and everything. And honestly, I was not that big of a fan of a lot of the looks this year. I think that each reunion, there's at least 2 or 3 favorites that I have. But the only person that I really liked was Marlo. I thought she looked really nice sitting down. I thought her dress was very elegant. I loved her hair. And I would say that I liked Sheree and Sonia as well, because they kept it simple. But for the most part, I definitely felt like Marlo was my favorite. And my least favorite of all the housewives was definitely Kenya. I think Kenya missed. And Kenya usually always looks great at the reunions. I don't know what this year was all about. But not only the looks being a miss, but a lot of her moments fell flat as well. Kenya's supposed to be known as the shade assassin. And a lot of her stuff was really just falling flat. She's stumbling and fumbling. She was getting caught in a lot of, I don't know if I would necessarily say like she was lying about anything, but Andy, had to catch her a time or two. And we'll get to that in just a second. But we start out with Sheree sharing that she and Martell are no longer a thing, even though a lot of people didn't believe that they were a thing to begin with anyway. But to Sheree, she said that there was just way too much noise around Martell. Now, I did not watch Love and Marriage Huntsville because I don't have the OWN network, but I know that there's a lot of controversy around him and his ex, and him having like an outside baby, and now he's like on Love and Marriage Huntsville wanting to get back with the ex. I remember Sheree was on an episode, and when she was on it, it seemed as if they were not really close or together like that. So she just went on to say that it was just too much surrounding the two of them and that they were together no longer. But it did come up once again, the whole incident of Kenya saying that Martell at one point slid in her DMs. And, Sheree's like, well, why didn't you tell me about it? And Kenya's saying, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But still, later on in the reunion, she's downplaying the fact that the guy Roy that she was seeing went out on a date with Marlo, and also that he DM'd Marlo, and that was an instance in the episode where she had to kind of get caught up in what she was saying, because her statement was that Roy did not slide in Marlo's DMs, that he commented on Instagram Live. But the way the story goes is I think Marlo had on an outfit in an Instagram story, and he responded to it, saying that he liked the outfit that she had on or something of that nature. And then they did go out. But, I think Kenya just doesn't like the fact that someone interested in her once had a level of interest in Marlo, even if it didn't go anywhere, so she kind of took that L with that. She also tried to blame Marlo for the fact that we didn't see him that much on the season. Andy brought up that question of, well, we haven't seen Roy like that. And so Kenya was trying to say that there were things that he saw that Marlo said in the super trailer about him. But then Andy's like, well, the super trailer comes out after the season wrapped, and we didn't see him a lot during the season, so why haven't we been seeing him? And so Kenya's like, well, he's a businessman and this and that. She was doing a lot of deflecting, especially when it came to Roy. So I don't know. It didn't seem like they were actually a thing during the season. You can let me know what you guys think, but it didn't really seem very believable. Now, another moment where Kenya fell flat regarding Marlo, the incident in Birmingham came up where Marlo kicked the door trying to get Kenya's attention, and it ended up scaring Brooklyn. And so if you've been keeping up with Real Housewives news outside of the episodes, Mark Daly, he and Kenya are still going through their divorce proceedings, and he filed some contempt charges against Kenya, notating that incident of Marlo kicking the door and that putting Brooklyn in danger. So as that comes up, Marlo's trying to apologize about it. And then Kenya says, well, you're going to be subpoenaed to court. And so she goes behind the pillow to pull out this subpoena and hands it over to Andy. And it's like all suspenseful for a moment. It goes to commercial, comes back. And then Andy goes on to say, the subpoena is blank. So I guess she was trying to create her moment. And again, it did not land. It did not hit because her folks printed out the wrong paper. But she did say on Twitter that Marlo was properly served afterward. So basically, Marlo is going to have to be a witness in the case or in Kenya's behalf about the kicking on the door with the Mark situation. So Kenya, this is definitely not her season. She has admitted in her interview with Carlos King that season 15 was not a good one for her because she didn't really have storyline. And, and this is only the first part. We'll see how part 2 goes, but her reads weren't really landing as much. Her moments weren't landing. I don't think the look was really there. So, we're just going to reconvene with Kenya next season. So let's move on to Sheree. I'll have to say that Sheree is another star of the reunion episode, whether you think she stutters or whether you think, she backpedals or not. She has created some moments, and Andy is loving her, especially her She News paper that she printed out that she was using to shade Kandi, which was very interesting. So Andy, in another one of his shady moments in this reunion, part 1, he talked about how Sheree has, quote, a very interesting relationship with bills, right? And this stems from them bringing up once again Sheree's birthday dinner and who should pay. Should have been her, should have been Martell, should have been other people. And yeah, so he says she has a very interesting relationship with bills, which turns into Sheree kind of throwing some shade at Kandi and pulling her in. And then they start going back and forth about like plastic surgery and getting your money up and this and that. And so that's when Sheree brings out her She newspaper, and she is talking about, well, the first, I think 4 or 5 pages is about Kandi and her businesses and how it's bad reviews at her restaurants and how she needs to mop her floors because they're greasy, just things like that. And then how Tags, which is Kandi's store that she's had for 14 years, is selling clothes that you can find on Shein at a higher price. And Sheree's like, well, how can you say that I'm selling She by Shein and you're selling these things at your store? So they were going back and forth for a while. It was a very entertaining back and forth, I must say. I was really enjoying that. And so she also shows some receipts from Lawan, who is a party planner lady, and she put together the fashion show for her last year. And Rawan is saying that Sheree paid for everything. She paid all her bills. Because we know in the season finale that Sheree admits that she's been ducking and dodging bill collectors, and people are always making claims that she does not pay for things when she's supposed to. So Drew, she and Drew threw a birthday party for Kenya and Marlo, and Sheree didn't want to pay her like a certain amount for like some balloons or something like that. So here on the reunion, Andy said that he would Venmo Drew the money for Sheree, her half on those balloons, because I guess Drew is still waiting for that. But it's also going to be hard for Sheree to beat these allegations because a designer has come out on Instagram claiming that Sheree did not pay him for some of the work that she did or that they did for the She by Sheree line. So that's something I feel like that's going to be following her for a while. And again, like I said, I don't think she's going to be beating those allegations, but she seems to not care. So, I mean, more power to her. But it seemed too like it was a lot of spats with people coming at Kandi or coming at Drew, because then Kandi and Drew get into an argument back and forth about the whole situation with LaToya and if Drew and LaToya kissed each other and whatever. And so Kandi says what upset her is that she felt like Drew was calling her a liar by saying that Kandi was trying to produce a moment because she's trying to promote this movie that she and Todd did, which Drew stars in. And I can understand somebody calling you or you feeling a way about someone calling you a liar, especially if you know what you saw. Well, Kandi swears she knows what she saw. But it's still kind of a back and forth thing, even though others say that they saw Drew and Latoya close to each other or whatever. But mind you, this happened years ago. So it's kind of getting old. It's kind of irritating hearing about this over and over again. But I guess it's relevant now because of the fact that Drew and Ralph are divorcing. And now the rumors are that Drew is having, something with Ty, the basketball player. So Kandi and Drew, it gets a little nasty with their reads going back and forth with each other. But the good thing is that once the episode aired, Drew did go on the record on Twitter and apologize for things that she said, especially toward Kandi. And she said that she would like for them to sit down and talk, in which Kandi said that she would like to do that as well. So it sounds like they're going to come to a point of reconciliation. I mean, looking at the issues that they had during the season, it was very trivial, especially seeing how much Kandi has supported Drew with her music and with the movie and things like that. So hopefully, with the way that things went in this first reunion, that they will have that sit down. And when we see them next season, if we see them next season, that everything will come back together. But the sad part, though, is that Drew is also not beating the allegations of being a liar, because everyone essentially agreed that she's always telling stories, or she's telling fibs, or she's inflating the truth, which was interesting to say. Nobody had her back on that. I mean, Sanya said something about it. I want to say Marlo said something about it. Sheree, all the ladies called Drew a liar. So that was interesting there. Let's see. So I don't want to give this too much time with the friends of the show, because Monyetta and Courtney were not the most interesting. And this was Monyetta's second season on Housewives of Atlanta as a friend, and it still just wasn't landing. It seemed as though she was following behind Kenya and Kandi a lot. But also when she would try to create these moments or try to have these reads in her confessionals, it just didn't feel organic. It didn't feel like it was landing. But she did come out, and Courtney comes out, and then they once again go back and forth about Courtney potentially calling Drew a B-word, if Drew really said it or not. And that's another thing that's just like irrelevant. They also went back to if Marlo really hit Monyetta with the door. And we all saw she did. I mean, Sheree and Marlo, they did try to gaslight the situation, but anybody with eyes could see that Marlo hit her with that door. And so, let me go back to this also with Kenya Moore. This should have been under her update too. So she shares that her hair spa will be opening soon. There was a lot of hoopla about the fact that the event was not shown on the last episode, or that it was shown like little snippets. But there was someone on social media who went by the location and said, it's not open yet. Kenya's lying. Her hair salon is not real. Kandi came to the defense of it, but Kenya also said, it opens later this fall, that she wants to build a second level, like a loft. And she didn't want to wait until it was already open to then halt operations, add it in, and then, do all that work later. So it's supposed to open later this year. So we're going to see. And then also, Courtney and Drew, they get into it toward the end as well. In the season finale, toward the end, Courtney has these hot mic moments where she basically says that Drew only wanted Ralph to adopt her son so that he can take care of him and he could pay for everything. Some really like unnecessary things. If you recall, they did have a storyline, I want to say it was last season, about Ralph adopting her son. But in the end, he decided that he didn't want to, even though he wanted to write a book about step parenting. Ralph is just a very interesting character, which we all know. But for some reason, Courtney feels like she has the ability to speak on their situation, even though she's this cousin. I think she said like her mom's sister and his dad's uncle, or like brother and sister or something like that. So that's what makes them cousins. But it's a very questionable situation because, for one, how is it all of a sudden that Courtney's becoming this sort of enemy for Drew? Why does she have all this vitriol for her? To the point that she is now, feeling that she could say things about their situation with their children. And that made Drew very upset. So toward the end, she kind of had a Will Smith moment, when he's like, keep my wife's name out your effing mouth. She was basically saying that about her son. And Courtney tried to say that she didn't say anything about him, but everyone chimed in, including Andy, to say, yes, girl, you did. So that's kind of where the reunion episode ends. Next week, Ralph is going to come out, and we're going to hear more about their divorce. Andy did ask Drew if she wanted to talk about it, and she said, that she didn't, out of respect for their kids, if they're still in the proceedings. And they're also still living together in the same home, which she says is very awkward for her. But and then Kandi had kind of made a comment that wasn't so nice earlier in the episode, saying that she thinks that Drew gaslights Ralph. And you know what? I wouldn't go as far as to saying that, but based on what we've been able to see, they have a very toxic dynamic. And at one point, some of the women said that they think that they can reconcile. Something like Cecil and Simone from Married to Medicine. If you watched that season where they were separated and headed toward divorce, but by the end of the reunion, they were able to come back together. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case for Drew and Ralph. Like I said, based on what we see, the dynamic is just not healthy. They don't seem like they respect each other. They don't seem like they really love each other, or that they were really a good fit to begin with. Especially seeing how things are now and how they were racing each other to the courthouse and how they're just very tit for tatty. You know, it's always unfortunate to see a relationship or a marriage break up, but with theirs, you know, it might just be the right thing. When it comes to the rest of the ladies, you know, we heard from Marlo about how things are going with her and Scott Lee and her nephews, and Sonya, we didn't really hear too much from her this part, but we probably will in part 2. You know, she came out revealing that she was 4.5 months pregnant at the time. She's due Christmas. So I think we'll probably hear more of her story in part 2. I also don't know if the husbands are coming out like they usually do. I think we're probably only going to see Ralph, which will be interesting. So, you know, Ross, Todd, don't know if we want to see them, but we'll find out. Another funny moment, a couple of funny moments. So one, Courtney comes out. She's throwing shade at Drew. Drew's like, oh, hey, Courtney, I have something for you. She has a prop, and she throws a plum at Courtney. So at first I thought it was going to be like a rotten peach, but it was a plum. She throws it, and then Andy's like, oh, I'll go get it. And he picks it up and takes a bite out of the plum. People just having a good time. I mean, the ladies were, you know, getting a little rowdy, and he tries to hit the little sound bath bowl thing. They still weren't getting quiet, and he gets up and goes and hits the gong in the background because it was the set was supposed to recreate their trip to Thailand. So it was just a lot of fun moments on this episode. I feel like it's not so intense. You know, just the shade thrown between Sheree and Kandi was interesting. Andy's shenanigans were interesting. And enough to keep us hooked. Now, if you have Peacock, you probably should watch the extended uncensored version where you like hear them cursing and they have a little bit more to add than they had on TV. That was a version that I watched because I have Sling and where I can watch live television, and it was not acting right when the episode aired, which I was not too happy about. But what did you think about this reunion? Since our last episode where we talked about, I had my guest Alexis on, and we were talking about a reboot. I have seen news since then on TV Deets, and I think that came from the Jasmine brand that Kenya, Sheree, and Kandi would be coming back for sure, and the other ladies would be up in limbo. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that? I do think that the three of them, Kenya, Sheree, and Kandi, are a pivotal part of the Real Housewives franchise right now, especially because, you know, they've made the most impact. You know, they have been on there the longest. And I definitely think that Sheree has earned her keep on this reunion, just with the way that she has really kept Andy engaged. Because, especially with that newspaper, I keep repeating it, but he said he wants a subscription, that he wants to have it at BravoCon. He's probably going to put it in the clubhouse too. So Sheree, I think she definitely earned her keep with that. Kandi, she's never going to go anywhere unless she wants to. I don't see them ever getting rid of Kandi. And I know with Kenya, she's having her ups and downs lately, but I think she's still an integral part. I just think that she needs to be more forthcoming like she has in the past. I kind of feel like there's been a difference with that we haven't been getting as much from Kenya Moore as we have. And maybe it is that she's bored. Maybe it is that she feels like these girls need to be challenged, the ones that want to be on the show, and that they're not coming on as spares, but that they are coming on as real people who are ready to put in the work. So we're going to see. Part 2 comes on Sunday. And like, once again, we're going to see Drew and Ralph going face to face and see what comes out of that. So I hope that you enjoyed, and not just watching this right now, but watching the reunion episode as well. And as always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, so we can keep the conversations going. There's so much going on in the Real Housewives world. Salt Lake City has cranked back up. New York City is in the thick of things. Orange County is in the thick of things. November 5th is when Potomac is coming back. And we have to keep our ears to the streets for Beverly Hills and Dubai as well. But until then, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.